The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built. It floated in space, attached to Nexus Prime Station, and it could hold representatives from almost 1,000 different species. The ceiling was made of clear crystal, and through it, one could see 1,000,000 stars burning in the darkness. It was meant to remind everyone how small they were compared to the universe. Ambassador stood at the central podium and looked up at those stars. She was 53 years old, with gray hair tied back in a simple knot and eyes that had seen too many disappointments. Behind her, the human delegation sat in silence. They already knew what was coming. They had known for weeks. Around them, arranged in a massive spiral that went up and up toward the crystal ceiling, sat the representatives of 847 species. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that mind could not fully understand what she was seeing. There were beings made of light, creatures that floated in tanks of strange liquid, and things that existed partly in dimensions that humans could not perceive. All of them were watching her. Most of them were not friendly. The High Speaker stood at his own podium across from. He was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms that he folded across his chest. His species had led the Galactic Council for 12,000 years. They believed, truly and completely, that they were better than everyone else. "The Council has voted," he announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into 10,000 languages, on the matter of full membership for the Human Confederation. Did not move, she barely breathed. "The vote is as follows: in favor 43, against 712, abstaining 92. The High Speaker's thin lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "The motion fails. Humanity's application for full membership is," for the 47th time. Had been present for 31 of those votes. She had argued, pleaded, presented evidence, made deals, and called in every favor she had. It never mattered. The result was always the same. "The Council recognizes humanity's contributions to galactic society," the High Speaker continued. His voice was smooth and practiced. "However, the consensus remains that your species is too young, too aggressive, and insufficiently evolved for full participation in Council affairs. Perhaps in another century, you may apply again." In the seats behind, the human delegation stirred with anger. Admiral's hands curled into fists. Doctor closed her eyes and shook her head. Young, attending his first council session, looked like he wanted to scream, but just stood there, looking up at the stars. 300 years. That was how long humanity had been part of galactic civilization. That was how long they had been treated as children, as primitives, as guests who were tolerated but never welcomed. They paid tribute tariffs that no full member paid. They were banned from certain hyperspace routes. Their ships were searched without cause. Their scientists were accessed to research facilities. Their colonies were supervised by council observers who treated humans like dangerous animals. 300 years of being told to wait, to be patient, to prove themselves. Lowered her gaze from the stars and looked at the High Speaker. She looked at the hundreds of representatives who had voted against her people. She looked at the handful who had voted in favor, including old Eth of the, who sat with her head bowed in disappointment. And then smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally let go of something they had been carrying for a very long time. "The Human Confederation accepts the Council's decision," she said. The chamber went quiet. This was not the usual response. Usually, the human ambassador argued, protested, demanded explanations. Usually, there were speeches about injustice and fairness and the contributions humanity had made. Reached into her pocket and placed a small crystal device on the podium. It glowed with a soft blue light. "This device contains a formal notice," she said. "It is being transmitted to every human ship, station, colony, and outpost in Council space. It is also being sent to every Council member world." The High Speaker frowned. "What notice?" "The Human Confederation is withdrawing from the Galactic Council," said. Her voice was calm and clear. "Effective immediately. All treaties, agreements, and obligations between humanity and the Council are hereby void. Human space is now closed to Council vessels. All humans currently residing in Council territory have been instructed to return home." The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted in 100 languages. Some laughed. Some looked confused. The High Speaker raised all 4 of his hands for silence. "Ambassador," he said, "this is dramatic, but it is also pointless. Your species cannot survive outside the Council. You need our technology, our trade routes, our protection. Within a decade, you will come crawling back, begging for readmission." Picked up the crystal device and put it back in her pocket. "Perhaps," she said, "or perhaps not. I suppose we will find out." She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the human delegation rose and followed. They moved in silence, their backs straight, their faces revealing nothing. Ambassador Eth pushed through the crowd to reach before she left. They were one of the few species who had always treated humans fairly. Eth herself had argued for human membership for over a century. She said, catching the human ambassador's arm, "Please, do not do this. Stay, fight. Things can change." Looked at her old friend. For a moment her calm mask slipped, and Eth could see the pain underneath. The exhaustion, the years of hopping and being disappointed. "We have been fighting for 300 years, Eth said softly. "We have given everything we have. We have done everything they asked. It was never going to be enough. We were never going to be enough." She squeezed Eth's hand. "Thank you for being our friend. I am sorry it has to end this way." Then she was gone. The doors sealed behind the human delegation with a sound like a tomb closing. Eth stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the chaos of the council chamber. Representatives were arguing about what this meant, what they should do, whether they should send ships after the humans or simply let them go. Most of them were relieved. The humans had always been uncomfortable to have around. They asked too many questions. They pushed too hard. They did not know their place. Good riddance, most of them thought. Eth did not think that. She had studied human history. She knew what happened when humans felt they had been treated unfairly. She knew what they were capable of when they stopped trying to make peace and started preparing for something else. She tried to warn the High Speaker. She tried to tell him that this was a mistake, that they should send diplomats after the humans, that they should offer concessions. He laughed at her. "They are primitives," he said. "They have nothing. They are nothing. Let them hide in their little corner of space and feel sorry for themselves. They will be back." Eth returned to her seat and watched the council move on to other business. They were already forgetting about humanity. It was just a minor matter, quickly resolved. She could not shake the feeling that they had all just made a terrible mistake. Far away, on a planet called Earth, messages were being received. Orders were being given. Ships that had been officially decommissioned were powering up their engines. Scientists who had been retired were returning to laboratories that did not officially exist. A countdown had begun. The galaxy had rejected humanity. Now humanity would show them what they had rejected. 3 months passed after the humans left the Grand Chamber. At first, the galaxy barely noticed they were gone. Humans had always been a small presence in council space. They kept to themselves, did their jobs, and tried not to cause trouble. When they started leaving, most species simply shrugged and went about their business. But then the absences began to add up. On Meridian Station, the largest trading hub in the sector, the dock master noticed that human freight captains had stopped accepting contracts. At first, he thought it was a temporary strike, some kind of protest. He sent messages to the Human Freight Association asking when they would return to work. He received a single reply: "We are not returning, best wishes." The dock master cursed and hired captains from other species. It was more expensive, but he managed. What he did not manage was finding anyone who could navigate the passage as safely as the human captains had. Within a month, 3 ships were lost to the passage's gravity wells. Trade through Meridian dropped by 40%. Similar problems appeared across Council space. On Research Station Theta 7, the leading center for quantum physics in the galaxy, the human scientists packed their belongings and left without warning. They had been working on stabilizing the Universal Translation Network, a system that allowed every species to understand every other species instantly. No one else understood their work well enough to continue it. 2 weeks after they left, the translation network began to glitch. Small errors at first. A word translated incorrectly here, a phrase that made no sense there. Then larger problems. Entire conversations became impossible between certain species. Diplomatic meetings dissolved into confusion. The Council brought in their best engineers from a dozen species. They studied the human work and could not understand it. The mathematics was beyond them. The solutions were based on principles they did not recognize. How did they do this? One engineer asked. Humans are supposed to be primitive. This is beyond anything we have. No one had an answer. On the agricultural world of Prime, the harvests began to fail. The automated farming systems that had been running perfectly for decades started making errors. Crops were planted at the wrong times. Irrigation systems delivered too much water or too little. The government called for technical support and discovered that the software running their entire agricultural network had been written by humans. Humans who were now gone. Humans who had left no documentation, no manuals, no way for anyone else to maintain their work. Ambassador Eth of the watched these problems grow and felt sick with worry. She sent a message to through back channels, hoping her old friend would respond. To her surprise, did respond. Dear Eth, the message read. I hope you are well. I know you must be confused about what is happening. I want you to understand that we never wanted this. For 300 years we tried to be good partners. We shared our knowledge. We helped where we could. We asked for almost nothing in return, only to be treated as equals. You know how that request was answered. So now we are going home, all of us, everywhere. We wish the Council well, but we will no longer carry burdens for those who despise us. Take care of yourself, old friend. Eth read the message 3 times. Then she went to the Council and demanded an emergency session. The High Speaker was annoyed. What is so urgent? He asked. The humans, Eth said. We need to reach out to them. We need to apologize, offer them membership, bring them back. The High Speaker laughed and many others laughed with him. Bring them back. Why? So they can complain more, so they can demand special treatment. Because they were holding things together, Eth said. Systems we did not even know they were maintaining. Networks we thought ran themselves. They were doing work that nobody else could do, and they were doing it for free, and now that work is not being done. Nonsense, the High Speaker said. We have the finest engineers in the galaxy. Whatever the humans were doing, we can do better. Eth tried to argue, but no one wanted to listen. The Council had already moved on. They were busy with more important matters. Trade disputes between ancient powers, territorial conflicts, the endless politics of 1,000 species trying to share a galaxy. The human problem would solve itself. Everyone was sure of it. On Earth, things were very different. Stood in the command center of Project Prometheus, a facility that did not officially exist. It was built into the mountains of a continent called Antarctica, beneath 3 kilometers of ice and stone. Even the most advanced Council sensors could not detect it. Around her, thousands of humans worked at stations filled with technology that would have shocked the Galactic Council. Ships that did not use hyperspace but something faster. Weapons that could crack planets. Shields that could stop a star from going supernova. For 300 years, humanity had been hiding. They had played the role of the primitive newcomers, the young species that was eager to learn and slow to contribute. They had let the galaxy underestimate them. They had let themselves be mocked and dismissed, and all that time they had been learning, watching, building. Project Prometheus is now fully active, reported Admiral, who had left the Council delegation and returned to her true work. All deep space construction platforms are online. The fleet is being assembled. Nodded, how long until we are ready? For the first phase, 6 months. For full capability, 2 years. Good. Looked at the massive display screen that showed Earth and its colonies. Millions of humans finally able to stop pretending, finally able to be what they truly were. Begin Phase 1, and send the formal notice to the Council. The notice arrived at Nexus Prime Station 3 days later. It was simple and direct. To the Galactic Council, the Human Confederation hereby closes its borders to all Council traffic. No Council vessels will be permitted in human space for any reason. Any vessel that enters human space without permission will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. All existing treaties and agreements are void. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Humanity wishes the Council well and hopes that we may meet again someday as equals. The High Speaker read the notice and sneered. Arrogant little creatures, he said. Let them hide. Let them pretend they are important. In 10 years, when their economy collapses and their people are starving, they will beg us to take them back. Eth said nothing. She just stared at the notice and felt a cold dread growing in her heart. She had studied humans. She knew their history. She knew about their wars, their revolutions, their endless capacity for both destruction and creation. And she knew one thing that the High Speaker did not seem to understand. Humans never bluffed. When they said they would do something, they meant it. When they closed a door, it stayed closed. When they decided that someone was their enemy, they did not stop until that enemy was defeated. The galaxy had spent 300 years making humanity feel unwelcome. Eth was terrified to find out what would happen next. 1 year had passed since humanity closed its borders, and the galaxy was starting to fall apart. It began with the hegemony, a powerful empire that controlled over 200 star systems. One morning, without any warning, their core worlds lost hyperspace access. Ships that were traveling faster than light suddenly dropped back to normal speed in the middle of empty space. Some of them survived. Many did not. 17,000 had died in the first hour. The hegemony's scientists worked frantically to understand what had happened. Their hyperspace drives were functioning normally. Their ships were undamaged, but something in space itself had changed. The invisible paths that allowed faster-than-light travel had simply stopped existing. Before they could find an answer, the same thing happened to the collective, then the Union, then a dozen smaller nations. The hyperspace beacon network was failing. This network was ancient beyond memory. No living species knew who had built it or how it worked. They only knew that it existed, a web of invisible beacons scattered across the galaxy that made hyperspace travel possible. Without it, traveling between stars would take centuries instead of days. And now, piece by piece, it was dying. The Council convened in emergency session. For the first time in centuries, the Grand Chamber was filled with fear instead of politics. Representatives who usually argued about trade routes and territorial borders now sat in stunned silence as the reports came in. We have lost hyperspace access to 37% of Council space, announced the Chief Science Advisor, whose 4 eyes blinked rapidly with stress. The network is degrading at an increasing rate. At current projections, we will lose another 20% within 6 months. How is this possible? Demanded the High Speaker. The beacon network has existed for millions of years. Why would it fail now? The Science Advisor hesitated. We have been researching that question, High Speaker. We found something in the archives, a classified report from 200 years ago. Show me. The report appeared on every screen in the chamber. It was written in Galactic Standard, but had been translated from another language. Human language. The hyperspace beacon network is dying, the report read. Its quantum foundations have been destabilizing for approximately 50,000 years. At current rates of decay, complete network failure will occur within 300 to 400 years. However, we have developed techniques to repair and maintain the network. We are willing to share this knowledge with the Council in exchange for full membership and equal standing. The chamber was silent. This report was submitted to the Council 200 years ago, the science advisor said quietly. It was classified and buried. The humans were told their findings were incorrect and their offer was rejected. But the network kept working, someone said. Yes. The science advisor's voice was barely a whisper, because the humans maintained it anyway. For 200 years, human engineering teams traveled across Council space, repairing beacons, stabilizing quantum pathways, keeping the network alive. They asked for nothing in return except the membership they were repeatedly. The High Speaker's blue-gray face had turned pale. Are you telling me that the humans were secretly keeping our entire transportation network from collapsing, and we did not know? We did not want to know, High Speaker. Every time they tried to tell us, we ignored them. We told ourselves that primitives could not possibly understand technology we could not understand. We were wrong. Ambassador Eth rose from her seat. We need to contact the humans immediately. We need to apologize, offer them whatever they want, bring them back. Agreed, said several other representatives. Eth led a delegation to the human border. They traveled in the finest diplomatic vessel the Council possessed, carrying gifts and offers of full membership, unlimited trade access, anything the humans wanted. They were met at the border by a single automated probe. The Human Confederation is not accepting visitors at this time, the probe announced. We suggest the Council address its own infrastructure concerns. This message will not repeat. Eth tried everything. She transmitted personal messages too. She broadcasted apologies from the Council. She begged and pleaded with empty space. There was no response. She returned to the Council with nothing but bad news, and in her absence, things had gotten worse. The communication relays were failing. These were another system that humans had quietly maintained, routing trillions of messages across the galaxy every day. Without them, species that had talked to each other for suddenly could not communicate. Medical research databases went offline. Centuries of knowledge about diseases and treatments, all stored in systems that human programmers had built and maintained. Gone. Agricultural optimization networks crashed. These systems told farmers across the galaxy when to plant, when to harvest, how to maximize their yields. Without them, food production dropped by 30% in a single season. And then there were the asteroids. For 300 years, humans had been quietly tracking dangerous asteroids across Council space. When they found one that threatened a populated world, they would adjust its course slightly, just enough to make it miss. No one had asked them to do this. No one had thanked them. Now they were gone, and no one was watching the sky. The first asteroid hit a colony world 6 months after humanity closed its borders. It was not a large asteroid, but it was large enough. The city it struck was home to 4 million people. There were no survivors. The High Speaker addressed the Council after the disaster. For the first time in his long career, he looked afraid. We must find a way to bring the humans back, he said. Whatever it takes, whatever they want, we cannot survive without them. But Eth knew it was too late. She had finally managed to get a message through too, using old codes from their friendship. The response was short. We are sorry for your losses, wrote. We truly are, but we will not return. For 300 years we gave everything we had to a galaxy that despised us. We maintained your networks, protected your worlds, solved your problems, and asked only to be treated as equals. You refused. Again and again you refused. Now you must learn to solve your own problems. Perhaps in time you will learn to treat others better than you treated us. We hope so, but we will not be there to see it. We have other plans now. Goodbye, Eth. I am sorry it ended this way. Eth sat alone in her quarters and wept. Outside, the galaxy was burning. Species that had relied on Council infrastructure were suddenly cut off from each other. Old enemies, held in check by the threat of Council intervention, began to mobilize their fleets. Wars that had been frozen for centuries threatened to reignite. And somewhere beyond the closed borders of human space, something was happening. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures, construction on a scale that had never been seen before. The humans were not just surviving. They were building something. Eth stared at the sensor readings and felt a new fear growing in her heart. Not fear of what the humans might do to the galaxy. Fear of what they might do without it. 2 years had passed since humanity closed its borders. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. The hyperspace beacon network was now functioning at only 40% capacity. Entire regions of space were cut off from each other. Trade had collapsed. Wars had broken out between species that had been at peace for thousands of years. Billions of beings had died from famine, conflict, or disasters that no one was prepared to handle. And then the long-range sensors detected something that made everything else seem unimportant. Around Sol, the star that humans called their sun, something impossible was being built. A swarm. The Council's top scientists looked at the data and could not believe what they were seeing. A swarm was a collection of millions of structures orbiting a star, capturing its energy. It was the kind of project that took advanced civilizations tens of thousands of years to complete. The humans had started building it 2 years ago. It was already 40% complete. "This is impossible," said the chief science advisor. "No species can build this fast. No species has this kind of technology. The humans were primitives. They struggled to build basic hyperspace drives." "Apparently," Eth said quietly, "they were not as primitive as we thought." The council convened to discuss this new development. For once, there was no arguing, no political maneuvering. Everyone was too shocked. "How?" the High Speaker demanded. "How could they hide this from us?" A historian named stepped forward. She was old, even by standards, and she had spent the last century studying human culture and history. When the humans left, she had been one of the few who thought it was a mistake to let them go. "I believe I can explain," she said, "but you will not like the answer." She activated a display that showed records going back 300 years. Human ships, human technology, human scientific papers. When humans first made contact with the Council, they presented themselves as a young species, eager to learn, said. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons were weak. Their science was basic. We accepted this presentation because it matched our expectations. Humans were young. Of course they were primitive. She changed the display. New images appeared. Schematics, blueprints, hidden data that had been recovered from abandoned human facilities. But we were wrong. Everything the humans showed us was deliberately designed to be inferior. Their clumsy ships were actually high-precision instruments, programmed to fly badly. Their weak weapons were training devices, built to look dangerous without actually being dangerous. Their scientific papers were careful to never reveal anything truly advanced. The chamber was silent. For 300 years, continued, humans have been learning everything we could teach them while revealing almost nothing of their true capabilities. They studied our technology, our science, our culture. They identified our weaknesses. They mapped our networks and systems. And all the while, they were developing their own technology in secret. Why, someone asked, why would they do this? Looked sad. Because they knew we would not accept them as equals. They knew that if we saw their true power, we would see them as a threat. So they hid, they pretended, they waited. Waited for what? For us to reject them completely. For us to make it clear, beyond any doubt, that we would never accept them. That gave them the freedom to stop pretending. The High Speaker's hands were shaking. Are you saying that the humans have been preparing for this moment for 300 years? No, said. I am saying they have been preparing for much longer than that. I found records suggesting that humans began their hidden technology programs before they even made first contact with the Council. They expected us to reject them. They planned for it. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded that the Council attack human space immediately before they became too powerful. Others argued for diplomacy, for surrender, for anything that might save them. In the midst of the chaos, Eth received a message. It was from. Come to the border, the message said. Alone, unarmed, no recording devices, I will meet you. Eth did not hesitate. She took a small shuttle and flew to the edge of human space. She stripped the shuttle of all weapons and sensors, exactly as requested. Then she crossed the border. What she saw on the other side broke her understanding of reality. Cities floated in space, not orbiting anything, just hanging in the void as if gravity did not exist. Ships moved in ways that should have been impossible, appearing and disappearing without using hyperspace. Some of them seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions at once, their shapes shifting in ways that hurt Eth's eyes to look at. And the humans themselves had changed. Some of them still looked normal, but others had begun to transcend their biological forms. Eth saw humans with bodies made of light, humans who existed as patterns of energy, humans who seemed to be in multiple places at the same time. Met her at a station that looked like nothing Eth had ever seen, looked the same as she had 2 years ago, older but still human. She smiled when she saw her old friend. Thank you for coming, said. What happened to you? Eth whispered. What have you become? Led her to a window that looked out over a construction site. Millions of machines were working in perfect coordination, building structures that Eth could not identify. We stopped pretending, said. For 300 years we held ourselves back. We limited our research. We restricted our technology. We did this because we wanted to be part of your civilization. We wanted to work with you, to build together, to share what we could become. She turned to face Eth. But you would not let us. You saw us as primitives, as children, as creatures to be tolerated but never respected. So we decided to stop waiting for your acceptance. We decided to become what we were always capable of becoming. And what is that? Smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. Something new, something that has never existed before. We do not fully understand it ourselves yet, but we are learning. Every day we learn more about what is possible. Eth looked at the construction site, at the impossible ships, at the transformed humans. Are you going to conquer the galaxy, destroy the Council, take revenge for how we treated you? No, shook her head. We are not interested in revenge. We are not interested in the galaxy at all, not anymore. We are going somewhere else. Where? Somewhere the Council cannot follow. Somewhere we can build without restriction, explore without permission, become whatever we choose to be. Put her hand on Eth's shoulder. I wanted to tell you in person because you were always our friend. I wanted you to understand. Understand what? That we never hated you. We never hated any of them, not even we were just tired of begging for acceptance, tired of being told we were not good enough, tired of giving everything and receiving nothing. Eth felt tears running down her face. I am sorry, she said. I am so sorry. I know. Hugged her, a simple human gesture that meant more than any diplomatic speech. And that is why I wanted to give you a choice. What comes next, you should be part of it, if you want to be. What do you mean? pointed at the construction site. "We are building a gateway, a door to somewhere else, somewhere better, and when it is finished, we are going to leave this universe behind." Eth stared at her in disbelief. "You are leaving the universe?" "Yes, but the door will stay open for a while, for anyone who wants to follow." Smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young diplomat Eth had met a century ago, full of hope and determination. "Think about it," she said, "and tell the others. Anyone who treated us with kindness, anyone who saw us as equals, they are welcome to come with us, but they will have to decide for themselves." Eth returned to Council space with a message that would change everything. The humans were not just leaving. They were inviting others to join them. 5 years had passed since humanity closed its borders. The galaxy was dying. The hyperspace beacon network was down to 40% functionality. Interstellar civilization, which had connected thousands of species for millions of years, was breaking apart. Wars burned across dozens of sectors. Famine had killed billions. Ancient enemies, no longer held in check by the threat of Council intervention, had begun campaigns of conquest and destruction. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of what it had been. The Grand Chamber was half empty. Many species had withdrawn to protect their own interests. The High Speaker had resigned in disgrace, and no one had been able to agree on a replacement. And at the edge of known space, the humans had finished their project. The gateway was enormous. It floated in the void between stars, a ring of strange material that pulsed with energies that Council scientists could not identify. Through its center, there was not darkness. There was something else, something that looked like light from a place that had never known shadow. Humanity's final message was transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. "To the Galactic Council and all the species of this universe," the message began. "This is the Human Confederation. We are leaving. We have found other universes, infinite other universes where we can build without restriction, explore without permission, and become whatever we choose to be." Eth listened to the message in her quarters, surrounded by boxes. She had already made her decision. Her government had made theirs. "But we have not forgotten where we came from," the message continued. "We remember the species who showed us kindness when others showed contempt. We remember those who argued for us, traded fairly with us, treated us as equals even when their governments did not. The gateway will remain open for 100 years. Any species that wishes to join us, not as subordinates, not as probationary members, but as true partners, is welcome. The stars we are going to are not ours alone. They belong to anyone who is willing to reach for them together. To those who choose to stay, we suggest you learn to cooperate. The beacon network can be repaired. The damage can be undone, but only if you work together. Only if you stop treating others as inferior because they are different or young or strange. This is humanity's gift and humanity's lesson. The stars belong to those who reach for them together. We hope to see you on the other side." The message ended. Eth finished packing and walked to the shuttle bay. Around her, thousands were doing the same. The government had voted, and the vote had been nearly unanimous. They would follow the humans into the unknown. They were not the first. 43 species had already passed through the gateway. Some were old allies of humanity, species who had always treated them fairly. Others were former enemies who had realized too late what they had lost. Still others were young species, newcomers who saw in humanity a vision of what they could become. Eth's shuttle joined a convoy of thousands, all heading toward the border of human space. When they crossed into human territory, they were greeted not by weapons or warnings, but by guides. Human ships, sleek and beautiful, escorted them toward the gateway. Met Eth at the final checkpoint. She looked different now, changed by whatever technologies the humans had developed. There was light in her eyes that had not been there before, and she moved with a grace that seemed to ignore gravity. "I knew you would come," said "I could not stay," Eth replied. "Not after everything I have seen, not after everything I have learned." Smiled and took her hand. "Come, let me show you what we have found." They boarded a ship and flew toward the gateway. As they approached, Eth could see other ships passing through, hundreds of them, carrying millions of beings toward a new universe. "Are you not worried," Eth asked, "that some of these species might cause trouble, that they might turn on you?" "No," said, "because we are not building an empire. We are not creating a new council. We are offering something different, a partnership of equals. Everyone who comes through that gateway agrees to the same rules. No species is superior to another. No one is a voice. Every decision is made together. And if someone breaks those rules," looked at her with eyes that held centuries of wisdom, "then they will be asked to leave. But I do not think that will happen often. The species who are coming through that gateway are coming because they want something better. They have seen what happens when beings treat each other as enemies. They want a different path." The ship entered the gateway. For a moment, Eth saw nothing but light. Then the light faded, and she saw what lay on the other side. Stars, millions of stars, more than she had ever seen. But these stars were different. They burned with colors she had never witnessed, colors that did not exist in her home universe. Planets orbited them, worlds that looked like nothing she had ever imagined. And there were ships everywhere. Human ships and ships and ships from 100 other species, all working together. They were building stations, establishing colonies, exploring the unknown. They were doing what the Galactic Council had always claimed to do but never actually accomplished. They were reaching for the stars together. "It is beautiful," Eth whispered. "It is just the beginning," said. "There are infinite universes out there, Eth. Infinite possibilities. We will never run out of things to explore, things to build, things to become. And we will do it together as partners, as equals." Eth looked back through the gateway at the universe she was leaving behind. Somewhere out there, the council was still arguing, still fighting, still treating others as inferior. They had been given a chance to change, but most of them had not taken it. Perhaps they would learn. Perhaps, in time, the species that remained would build something better from the ruins of what they had destroyed. The beacon network could be repaired if they worked together. The wars could end if they chose peace. But that was not Eth's concern anymore. She turned away from her old universe and looked at the new one that stretched before her. "Where do we begin?" she asked. Smiled and pointed at a cluster of bright young stars. "Anywhere we want. That is the whole point." Far away in the old universe, the gateway continued to pulse with light. Ships passed through it every day, carrying beings who had decided to take a chance on something new. The 100 years would pass, and eventually the gateway would close. But by then, the galaxy would have changed. The species that remained had learned hard lessons. They had learned that no one was truly inferior. They had learned that cooperation was stronger than competition. They had learned that the greatest mistake they could make was to reject those who offered to help. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was different now. The probationary system had been abolished. No species was a voice. Decisions were made together with respect for all. They had not done this because they were kind. They had done it because they had seen what happened when they did not. They had watched their civilization nearly collapse because they refused to treat humans as equals. They would not make that mistake again. And sometimes, ships came back through the gateway. Human ships, carrying goods from the new universe, carrying knowledge and technology that the old universe had never seen. They traded fairly, shared freely, and never demanded anything in return. Each ship left behind the same message, carved into the hull of every gift they brought. "You were our first teachers. We hope someday to return the favor." The galaxy looked at the stars differently now. They were not a birthright to be hoarded. They were not a prize to be fought over. They were a promise that anyone could reach them if they were willing to reach together. And somewhere in a universe that burned with colors no one had ever seen, humanity continued to explore. They built wonders that imagination. They became things that description. They never stopped growing, never stopped learning, never stopped reaching for the next horizon. But they always remembered where they came from. And they always left the door open, just in case someone wanted to follow.